Welcome back to Everyday Wine Pairing, episode 13. Today we're diving into a simple but satisfying meal, a steak salad, a classic whiskey sour using Elijah Craig small batch, and some freshly brewed black iced tea. In this series, we show you how everyday meals can be amazing when you add a little intention. Flavor, texture, and pairing, it all comes together when you plan a little bit. So let's get into it. Let's first start off with the steak. Salt goes on early to pull out the moisture, creating a deeper seasoning and helping that sear develop. A good sear means caramelization, and caramelization is what actually links the steak with our whiskey pairing later. Elijah Craig Small Batch is the perfect bourbon for our whiskey drink, and the perfect match for this meal. It has vanilla, caramel, toasted oak, a little orange peel, and some baking spice. Those flavors are perfect for a whiskey sour because the cocktail highlights the citrus while softening the spice, and they pair with the steak because of the seared meat echoes the toasted barrel flavors. Crisp greens are essential not just for freshness, but for the pairing experience. You need texture and crunch to contrast the richness in both the steak and the bourbon-based cocktail. Once we've cut all the greens, let's start assembling the salad. Next we'll add garbanzo beans. They add earthiness and a little extra protein. Cranberries bring the brightness and the sweetness. Walnuts add a little bit of bitterness and the texture. And the Caesar dressing brings creaminess and a savory umami flavor. All these elements interact with our whiskey sour. The acidity cuts the fat, sweetness balances the bitterness, and the oak tones mirror the roasted notes in the steak. Now that the steak has rested, we can cut into it. The steak's crust is a pure Maillard reaction, the same chemical browning that bourbon picks up from the charred oak barrels. That's why bourbon and steak go along so well. They share their toasted notes, caramel flavors at a molecular level. Now we'll touch a little bit on why charred oak matters. Charred oak creates a layer inside the barrel called the red line. That's where heat caramelizes with the wood sugars. Over years, whiskey soaks in and out of the layers with changes in temperature. Every season it pulls out more flavor, vanilla, caramel, baking spice, and smoke. My wife Mariah has to go in for night shift tonight, so she's opting out of the whiskey cocktail, and instead she's going for a fresh brewed black tea. Fresh black tea has tannins and structures much like red wine. Perfect for anyone who wants a non-alcoholic pairing but also wants depth. I add a little bit of lemon for the acidity and a touch of stevia and serve it over ice. It's simple, it's clean, and it's refreshing. Now it's time for one of my favorite parts, the drink pairing. So let's talk whiskey. And this time we're going deeper because bourbon has one of the coolest histories in American food culture. The bourbon requirements are this. To be legally called bourbon, a whiskey must 1. Be made in the US, 2. Have at least 51% corn, 3. Be distilled under 160 proof, 4. Enter barrels at no more than 125 proof, 5. Be aged in new charred oak barrels, 6. Be bottled at 80 proof or higher. These new charred barrels are why bourbon tastes like bourbon: caramel, vanilla, oak, and spice. Today we're using Elijah Craig Small Batch, so let's just dip into a little bit of history. Elijah Craig Small Batch comes from the Heaven Hill Distillery in Bardstown, Kentucky, known as the bourbon capital of the world. Elijah Craig himself was a Baptist preacher in the 1700s and is often credited with inventing the practices of charring barrels. Was he actually the first? Maybe, maybe not. Historians debate, but Heaven Hill turned it into one of bourbon's most famous legends, and honestly, even if it's marketing, it adds a little bit of charm. Heaven Hill is the largest family-owned spirit producer in the US, and they make some of the most iconic bourbons: Evan Williams, Henry McKinney, and Old Fitzgerald. They are known for their traditional bourbon style of warm caramel, toasted oak, baking spice, and a little citrus. Elijah Craig Small Batch nails that balance perfectly. Now let's make our whiskey sour. It's just a simple drink. Bourbon, fresh lemon juice, and a little bit of simple syrup. That's it. It's bright, sweet, refreshing, and it's a classic cocktail. Now we can plate our salad. Then we add our steak and top it off with shaved Parmesan. And check this out. This meal hits every sensory category. Richness from the steak, crunch from the greens and the nuts, sweetness from the cranberries, creaminess from the dressing, and salt from the Parmesan. Take a bite, sip the whiskey sour, the acidity cuts through the richness, and the sweetness mirrors the cranberries, and the oak tones match the sear of the steak. I think this pairing turned out very well, and bourbon was one of the reasons why. And here are the 3 core rules. 1. Sweetness balances out the salt and the spice. 2. The acidity cleans the palate. 3. The oak mirrors roasted meats and the grilled flavors. That's why bourbon cocktails like a whiskey sour are easy to pair with meals than straight bourbon. That wraps up episode 13 of Everyday Wine Pairings. A simple steak salad, a bright whiskey sour with a ton of history behind it, and a refreshing black iced tea. If you enjoyed this episode, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment letting us know what pairing we should do next, whiskey, wine, cocktails, or non-alcoholic ideas. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.